March 17, 1945, Ohrdruf, Germany. The M4A3 Sherman tank rumbled through the cobblestone streets at dawn, its Ford GAA V8 engine growling like a caged animal. Inside the steel tomb, 5 men breathed recycled air that reeked of cordite and sweat. Staff Sergeant James Holloway pressed his face against the periscope, scanning the ruins of what had once been a quiet German market town. Every window was dark, every doorway a potential grave. What they didn't know yet was that 3 of them would be dead within the hour, and the 2 who survived would never sleep through the night again. Holloway's crew had been with the 4th Armored Division since Normandy. They had rolled through France, crossed the Siegfried Line, and punched deep into the heart of the Third Reich. Their Sherman, named Detroit Mercy, had survived more firefights than most tanks in the battalion. The crew believed she was blessed. They were wrong. She was just lucky. And in Ohrdruf, their luck was about to run out. The town had been declared clear by infantry the night before. But as Detroit Mercy turned onto Bahnhofstrasse, Holloway felt his stomach tighten. The street was too quiet, too perfect, the kind of quiet that made veteran tankers reach for their sidearms. He keyed the intercom. "Driver, slow it down. Gunner, traverse left. Watch those second-story windows." Private Eddie Kowalski, the driver, eased off the throttle. Corporal Bill Turner swung the 75mm M3 gun toward a bombed-out bakery. In the bow gunner position, Private First Class Lou Martinez gripped his .30 caliber Browning 1919, his knuckles white. The loader, Private Danny Reed, stood ready with another shell, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, from exhaustion. They'd been in combat for 11 straight days. The Sherman crept forward, 28 tons of American steel moving like a predator through alien territory. Holloway's eyes swept left, then right, then up. Always up. That's where the real danger lived in these German towns, not in bunkers or trenches, in attics, in bell towers, in shattered windows where a single man with a Panzerfaust could end 5 lives in an instant. The Panzerfaust was crude, brutal, and terrifyingly effective, a recoilless anti-tank weapon that fired a hollow-charge warhead capable of punching through 4 inches of armor. The Germans called it the Tank Terror. American crews had a simpler name for it, the Widowmaker. It had a range of only 60 yards, which meant the enemy had to let you get close, had to let you think you were safe. Then, from a shadowed doorway or a cellar window, the world would turn to fire and screaming metal. Halfway down Bahnhofstrasse, Holloway saw it. A flicker of movement in a 3rd-floor window of the old route house, the town hall. Just a shadow, maybe nothing, maybe everything. He opened his mouth to give the order to halt, but before the words left his throat, the 1st Panzerfaust streaked across the street. It missed by 3 feet, slamming into the cobblestones beside the tank and exploding in a spray of stone and smoke. The concussion rocked Detroit Mercy on her trads. Martinez opened up with a bow gun, stitching the route house windows with .30 caliber rounds. Turner traversed the main gun, searching for a target. Kowalski gunned the engine, trying to get them out of the kill zone. That's when Holloway realized they weren't facing 1 ambush. They were facing 6. Panzerfausts erupted from windows, doorways, and cellar hatches on both sides of the street. The Germans had turned Bahnhofstrasse into a gauntlet, a carefully planned trap designed to do one thing: burn American tanks. 2 more rockets hissed past the Sherman. One struck the corner of a building behind them. The other hit the front glasses plate with a metallic shriek that rang through the hall like a church bell. But it didn't penetrate. Not yet. "Back! Back! Get us out of here!" Holloway screamed into the intercom. Kowalski threw the transmission into reverse, but the street was narrow, and the Sherman was designed for forward assault, not retreat. The engine roared. The tracks chewed at the cobblestones. They were moving, but not fast enough. Holloway saw the German step out from behind a pile of rubble. He was young, maybe 18, blonde hair, hollow eyes. He wore the ragged uniform of the Volkssturm, the last-ditch militia Hitler had scraped together from old men and boys. In his hands he carried a fresh Panzerfaust, the warhead painted with a yellow stripe. High-explosive anti-tank, the kind that didn't miss. The boy raised the weapon. Holloway locked eyes with him through the periscope. For a fraction of a second, neither moved. Two young men, two different armies, the same war. Then the boy squeezed the trigger. The rocket screamed across the 15 feet between them and struck Detroit Mercy's right side, just below the turret ring. The shaped charge punched through the hull like a hot knife through wax. Inside the tank, the world became fire. The explosion tore through the crew compartment, turning steel into shrapnel and air into flame. Holloway felt the blast lift him off his seat. He heard Reed scream, smelled burning diesel, and something worse, something that had once been human. When the smoke cleared, the engine was still running, but Detroit Mercy was dying. And somewhere in the chaos, Holloway realized something that would haunt him forever. The boy with the Panzerfaust was still standing there, watching, waiting, holding a second rocket. March 17, 1945. Ohrdruf, Germany. 06:47 hours. Staff Sergeant James Holloway couldn't feel his legs. He didn't know if that was good or bad. The interior of the Sherman was filled with smoke so thick he couldn't see his own hands. Somewhere below him, Eddie Kowalski was screaming. Not words, just sound. The raw animal sound of a man who knows he's dying. Holloway forced himself to move. His training took over, the endless drills from Fort Knox suddenly more real than the pain. He grabbed the turret hatch wheel and spun it. The hatch flew open, and cold German air rushed in, pulling some of the smoke out with it. He dragged himself up and out, his hand slipping on something wet. He didn't look down to see what it was. Bill Turner was already out, crouched on the back deck of the tank, his face blackened, his eyes wide with shock. Below them, the Ford GAA engine still rumbled, oblivious to the carnage it powered. Turner pointed toward the rot house. His mouth moved, but Holloway couldn't hear him over the ringing in his ears. Then he saw what Turner was pointing at. The German boy. Still there. Still loading another Panzerfaust. But now there were more of them. 5, 6, maybe 7. All emerging from the rubble like ghosts, all carrying the same crude tube, the same terrible weapon. The street had become a shooting gallery, and Detroit Mercy was the prize. Holloway dropped back into the turret. His hands found the commander's .50 caliber machine gun, the Browning M2 mounted on the roof. He swung it toward the enemy and squeezed the trigger. The gun roared to life, spitting half-inch bullets across the street at 550 rounds per minute. The recoil shook his shoulders. The noise shook his soul. He watched the tracers arc through the morning light, watched them chew into brick and wood and flesh. The first German went down, then the second. But the boy with the blonde hair ducked behind a burned-out truck, and the others kept coming. This wasn't an army. This was desperation. This was a country bleeding out, throwing everything it had left at the enemy, even its children. Turner climbed back into the turret and grabbed the 75mm gun controls. "We gotta get that rot house," he shouted. Holloway nodded. If they could bring the building down, they could cut off the angles, give themselves a chance. Turner cranked the turret handwheel, transversing the main gun toward the town hall. He peered through the gun sight, made a minute adjustment, and screamed, "Up!" But there was no answer from below. Danny Reed, the loader, was gone, dead or dying in the smoke-filled hull. Turner's face went pale. Without a loader, the 75mm was useless. They had one shot in the breech, and that was all. "Make it count," Holloway said. Turner fired. The M3 gun kicked back with a roar that shook the entire tank. The high-explosive shell screamed across the street and punched through the Rathause's main entrance. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the building's facade erupted in a cascade of fire and stone. The second and third floors collapsed inward, burying whatever Germans had been inside under tons of rubble. The street fell silent. Holloway scanned the ruins through his periscope. Nothing moved. Maybe they'd done it. Maybe they'd actually survived. Then Kowalski's voice crackled over the intercom, weak and broken. "Sarge, I can't get out." Holloway dropped back into the hull. The smoke had cleared enough to see the horror below. The Panzerfaust had penetrated just behind the driver's compartment, and the shaped charge had done what it was designed to do. Eddie Kowalski was pinned beneath a twisted slab of armor plate, his legs crushed, his blood pooling on the floor. Lou Martinez, the bow gunner, was slumped over his weapon, his head bent at an impossible angle. Dead. Holloway and Turner grabbed Eddie's arms and pulled. He screamed. They pulled harder. The plate wouldn't budge. "We're not leaving you," Holloway said, though even as he spoke the words, he knew they might be a lie. The tank could cook off at any second. The fuel cells could ignite. The ammunition could blow. "Just go," Kowalski whispered. "Please, just go." Turner looked at Holloway, and in that moment both men understood what war really was. Not glory, not heroism, just impossible choices and the weight of surviving them. They heard the sound of treads on cobblestones, American treads. 2 more Shermans from their platoon rolled into Bahnhofstrasse, their commander standing in the open hatches, scanning for threats. One of them spotted Detroit Mercy and radioed for medics and mechanics. Help was coming, but it was too late for Martinez, and maybe too late for Kowalski. Holloway climbed out one last time and sat on the turret staring at the ruins of Ohrdruf. Somewhere in the rubble, the German boy might still be alive, or he might be another body under the stones. He didn't know which he hoped for. He thought about the 5 men who had entered this street. He thought about the 2 who would leave it. He thought about the 50 other streets just like this one, scattered across Germany, each one filled with its own ghosts. The medics arrived and went to work. They cut Kowalski free, loaded him on a stretcher and carried him away. He would lose both legs, but he would live. Turner helped pull Martinez's body from the bow gunner seat, wrapping him in a shelter half before laying him gently on the cobblestones. Reed's body was harder to reach. It took 2 mechanics and a crowbar. That night, Holloway sat in a liberated German house and wrote 3 letters. One to Martinez's mother in El Paso, one to Reed's wife in Pittsburgh, one to Kowalski's father in Detroit. He didn't tell them about the Panzerfaust. He didn't tell them about the boy. He told them their sons were heroes, that they died quickly, that they didn't suffer. He told them the lies that let families sleep at night. The 4th Armored Division rolled on. More towns, more streets, more Panzerfausts. By the time the war ended 5 weeks later, Holloway had lost count of the ambushes, but he never forgot Ohrdruf, never forgot Bahnhofstrasse, never forgot the sound of Eddie Kowalski screaming, or the look in that German boy's eyes. Years later, when people asked him about the war, Holloway would smile and say it was a long time ago. But every night, when he closed his eyes, he was back in Detroit Mercy, trapped in a steel coffin on a cobblestone street, waiting for the next rocket to come, screaming out of the shadows. Some men came home from the war. Others just stopped fighting.